Donald Trump has announced he will allow 600,000 Chinese immigrants into the country on legal student visas. My name is Peter Wiggin, and today we will be exploring Trump's recent immigration claims and if they are what they sound like, or if our president is merely being taken out of context, as has happened many times in the past. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, and give me your thoughts on the situation in the comments. Let's get into the video. So first off, I have a clip from Donald Trump himself.
President Xi would like me to come to China. It's a very important relationship. As you know, we're taking a lot of money in from China because of the tariffs and the different things, and it's a very important relationship. We're going to get along good with China. I hear so many stories about we're not going to allow their students. We're going to allow their students to come in. We're going to allow. It's very important. 600,000 students. It's very important. But we're going to get along with China. But it's a different relationship that we have now with China. It's a much better relationship economically than it was before. With Biden, boy, what he allowed they just took him to the...
So as you heard him say out of the horse's mouth, we are going to allow their students to come in. It's very important. 600,000 students. So what does this mean? Why is he saying this? He gives a bit of reasoning as he's talking. He says, look, trade relations between the U.S. and China are actually getting better even despite tariffs. We need to be congenial, we need to be magnanimous and benevolent towards them, and so thus we're going to bring in 600,000 Chinese students on visas. And so let's get some other opinions on this issue. I saw this on Twitter and I had to share it with you all. Sorry, X. I'm not going to call it X. I'm going to call it Twitter, the everything app. My apologies, I guess I'm stuck in the past, but this was a video I saw. It's Laura Ingraham speaking with Commercial Secretary Howard Lutnick. And Howard Lutnick right here, the Commerce Secretary, he's elaborating on Trump's proposal and saying why it might be a good thing, why it might actually benefit the country and the university system within this country. Let's take a look at this, get a different perspective.
Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, how is allowing 600,000 students from the communist country of China putting America first?
Well, the president's point of view is that what would happen if you didn't have those 600,000 students is that you'd empty them from the top, all the students would go up to better schools, and the bottom 15% of universities and colleges would go out of business in America. So his view is he's taking a rational economic view, which is classic Donald Trump, looking at higher education and saying,
but why are you
until
helping
we
Harvard?
Modify that.
That just helps Harvard and UCLA and UCal Berkeley and I mean y'all helping those schools. Why? They're like, basically factories of anti-American propaganda. Now they're getting a big influx of cash because of the Chinese students. I know President Trump has always been very pro-Chinese student. I just don't understand it for the life of me. Those are 600,000.
So I hope you paid close attention to that. Because as I was watching, I had to rewind the video 2 or 3 times to make sure I was hearing things correctly. I had to take a cotton swab to my ear canal to make sure I wasn't just hallucinating completely. But after watching that clip, I have more questions than I do answers about the situation. While Howard Lutnick tried to give a reasoning as to why Trump would allow 600,000 students into our country, which it's more like 300,000 extra students since we have about 300,000 Chinese students studying in this country in the first place, I began to think to myself, are you saying that the top spots in each university will be given to these Chinese students, reserved for these Chinese students? Are you saying our current university system is unsustainable without a massive influx of immigration? That's kind of what you're saying, right? Are you admitting that Native Americans, and I'm not talking about Indians, I'm talking about Americans that have been in this country for 10, 11, 12 generations, will be pushed down by that influx of immigration if it does occur? Does this seem to be America first? Is this protecting the interests of the American tax-paying population? Who is benefiting from this? And so pretty much Howard Lutnick is saying, look, if we don't let these Chinese students in, what'll happen is you'll have, white people, the native population, I guess, rising to the top of these universities, filling the void that these immigrants left. And the bottom 15% of universities will shut down. It's unsustainable. And now if you are truly now I'm not like a complete Thomas Sowell, free market, laissez-faire economist, but I enjoy the fruits of a free market economy to an extent, right? And if you're trying to prop up a university system in which 15% of the universities would go under without any extra help, and the only way that this can be sustained is by an influx of massive amounts, hundreds of thousands, millions of legal immigrants and students, then I don't think that's a tenable operation. I don't think that's something that should continue. I think that's something that should be dismantled. And I think there could be a lot of benefits for dismantling such an institution, getting rid of such a situation. So, just to summarize, that was one of the most cynical things I have ever heard spoken by a government official. And that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot. We're coming off the back of the cover-up of the Epstein files. We're coming off of the back of Pam Bondi and Kash Patel saying, Epstein files don't exist. And if they did exist, wouldn't I tell you? Don't you trust me as a high-level government intelligence official? Anyway, maybe I'm getting too deep into this, but you've heard enough of my opinions. Let's get on to some opinions of other people on Twitter. And now I have a tweet from Laura Loomer. And Laura Loomer, I mentioned her in a past video. I think it was the video talking about, I can't remember which video it was, but she's an inflammatory individual. She latches onto the goings-on of politics. She tries to ride the coattails of every here and there trend, giving her loud and boisterous opinions. And most of the time, these opinions are on the back of Trump supporting him. She's one of the most diehard MAGA conservatives out there. They're a dying breed at this point, but she's among that cohort. And anyway, she tweets right here saying, paging at Stephen Miller, nobody, I repeat, nobody wants 600,000 more Chinese, in quotation marks, students, aka communist spies in the United States. China murdered 1.2 million Americans. Now they get to replace us? This cannot happen, period. And you see she has 43,000 likes on this post with about 822.6 thousand views. I think she's right about that. I don't agree with her on most things. In fact, I don't really agree with her on anything. But the fact is, what is the reasoning behind this? If you have even the most diehard MAGA conservatives saying that this doesn't make sense, this isn't in our best interest, this is going to lead to the crumbling of the edifice of this country, then you have some explaining to do in the least. And so there's a little opinion from Laura Loomer. I have another opinion. This is from Eric Weinstein. And I've talked about Eric and Brett Weinstein before. I actually really like Brett Weinstein. I think he's been pretty consistent throughout the past half decade, ever since he was ran out of his university, what was Evergreen University in Oregon, and he became a member of the intellectual dark web. I think he has been one of the only individuals in that little group of Eric Weinstein, Sam Harris, Ben Shapiro, Joe Rogan, that has really stood up for his own principles and seen through the veil, seen through the shadows as to what's really going on regarding the COVID pandemic. He was one of the people that from the beginning was saying, hey, look, this looks like it's made in a lab. This looks synthetic. It looks artificial. It doesn't look like this just randomly came out of a wet market because somebody ate a bat. He was sounding the whistle whenever the COVID vaccine was being produced, saying it was actually an experimental gene therapy and not just a vaccine that's more euphemistic. And Eric Weinstein, his brother, has had some bad takes in the past, but I think this opinion is valuable. Eric Weinstein has had significant experience in the university and academia systems. And so if there's anybody I trust to know what the potential harm that 600,000 Chinese communist students could bring to America, it's going to be Eric Weinstein. And so also, you always got to take opinions with a grain of salt, though. You always got to think critically. I know that's like a buzzword nowadays, but anyway, Eric Weinstein says that would be national suicide. And I studied this intensely for years as co-founder of, and he advertises his think tank foundation, funded science and engineering workforce project at Harvard Econ and beer pubs. You are talking national suicide here. Can't candy coat it. You'd be giving away the store. So that's Eric Weinstein, somebody that's been deeply involved in academia, saying that, look, letting 600,000 Chinese students in on legal visas will lead to the destruction of our country. And so why is this the case? Why are people sounding these whistles? Why are people being so dramatic, saying this will lead to the destruction of our country, saying that these students, aren't they just students, 18 to 20-year-old individuals looking for a better life in our country through the acquisition of knowledge so they can contribute to a system and progress the world's technological infrastructure in a positive way? Isn't education a good thing? Isn't that something we stand for? Well, I'll give you some history as to why this is such a pernicious policy. And this starts off with the 1,000 Talents Plan. Now, I'll just leave a link to a Wikipedia article right here. I'll show you some screenshots. But pretty much the 1,000 Talents Plan, or the 1,000 Talents Program, and I'm reading from the Wikipedia article right here, is a program by the government of the People's Republic of China to recruit experts in science and technology from abroad, principally but not exclusively from overseas Chinese communities. The original program was replaced by another program called Qingming, and administered by the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology. Law enforcement and counterintelligence agencies in the United States, Australia, and Canada, and other countries have raised concerns about the program as a vector for intellectual property theft and espionage. Those two things, intellectual property theft and espionage, are the reasons as to why Eric Weinstein is saying this will lead to the destruction of our country. Now let's dive deeper into this article under the conflict of interest and fraud allegations section. And this says, and I'll show you another screenshot, the success of the program in recruiting U.S. trained scientists back to China has been viewed with concern from the U.S., with a June 2018 report from the National Intelligence Council declaring an underlying motivation of the program to facilitate the legal and illicit transfer of U.S. technologies, intellectual property, and know-how to China. U.S. and Canadian authorities have asserted that China intends to use scientists who are involved in this plan to gain access to new technology for economic and military advantage. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has indicated that foreign recruitment sponsor talent plans to bring outside knowledge and innovation back to their countries, and sometimes that means stealing trade secrets, breaking export control laws, or violating conflict of interest policies to do so. To sum this all up, what this is all saying is that this 1,000 Talents program is a program by the CCP to recruit people, let's say in Chinese enclaves, such as in San Francisco or Silicon Valley. You have a group of Chinese students. They're recruited onto this 1,000 Talents program, or sometimes they're shipped overseas from China, and they're allowed to enter a U.S. university. And from that, these students get into positions of research authority. They are given access to the databases of industry secrets, as you may say, and they're able to get that information and send it back to China. They're able to steal trade secrets, break export control laws, violate conflict of interest policies to do so. And that's not to say that every single individual recruited in the 1,000 Talents program is a Chinese Communist Party spy. In fact, that would be counterproductive. That wouldn't be smart. What would be more intelligent is 1 out of every 1,000 people recruited by this talent program is somebody that you will gain secrets from, somebody that will send industry secrets, research conclusions, published papers or unpublished papers back to China. And so then you can say, oh, hey, we have 300,000 students, Chinese students currently studying in the United States, but the 300 that are actually spies won't be found. It's plausible deniability. They can cover their tracks a lot more easily. In January 2020, FBI arrested Charles M. Lieber, the chair of Harvard University's Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology, for lying about his ties to the program, and was convicted in December 2021. That's pretty recent, huh? In May 2020, the FBI arrested a former researcher at the Cleveland Clinic for failing to disclose ties to the 1,000 Talents program. Although a year later, federal prosecutors dismissed the case, in June 2020 it was reported that the National Institutes of Health had investigations into the behavior of 189 scientists. In November 2020, Song Guojing, a TPP participant, pled guilty to making false claims to the FBI about his ties to the Chinese government during his employment at Ohio State University. So again, this isn't a conspiracy. You're not grasping at straws to say that China is sending over spies into our country to steal secrets from our universities, to steal research conclusions, to steal information that required hundreds of millions of dollars of American grants, taxpayer money, and man hours, hundreds, thousands of man hours, and American ingenuity on top of it. It's not a stretch to say that. In fact, it's pretty smart. I hope that we're doing that to countries around the world. The difference is countries around the world are a lot stricter as to how many American students they'll let into their countries. Look up right now. I'll let you do some research on your own. Look up right now how many American students are currently studying in Chinese universities. Not half and half Chinese American students, but full-blown, full-blooded, 12th generation American students are studying in China, studying in Beijing. Look it up. Let me know in the comments. I can assure you, it's far less than this. because they have strict regulations on such. Because this is money. Intellectual property is called property for a reason. And stealing such is just as much theft as if you were to steal property from my home. If you were to steal work from my hands, ingenuity from the brains of my children. There are currently 55 million foreigners here on legal visas. This is just one example, a little example to wet the whistle as to why this may not be the best policy idea. Maybe you can argue in the comments as to why it might be a good idea. Maybe you can be like Howard Lutnick and say there are actually some good things that can come from this. Let me know in the comments. I don't think so myself. Maybe there's something I'm overlooking. What I can say is we had the H-1B visa debate at the end of December. Trump bombed Iran at the start of June. The Epstein files are being continually shoved under the rug, with district judges like Richard Berman denying the release of grand jury documents. Trump is talking about arming Ukraine again. Is this America first? Who is Trump working for? Who is Trump's cohort? Who supports this presidency? These are just some questions to leave you with as we go into this next day. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you think I'm off, let me know. We can have a debate. I've got 5 subscribers. If you leave a comment, I'll see it. I'll respond. And if I don't, it's probably because you said something smart and I couldn't respond to it because you win. Anyway, we'll see you in the next one. Be sure to subscribe for more videos like this, more breaking news, more breakdowns, opinions, and historical commentaries.